fearful avoidant left while they still had feelings for you? And what if they even told you that they did? And you can almost feel that kind of internal battle they're having with themselves about your relationship. How are you supposed to make sense of that? Should you keep fighting for them if you notice that, or let them go and let them figure it out on their own? In this video, we're gonna talk about the number one reason why fearful avoidants leave while they still have feelings in a relationship. Something weird happens for fearful avoidants after they've been in a relationship for a while. To really understand why this happens and why they suddenly break up with you, we need to rewind and look at how FAs approach relationships from the beginning. The fearful avoidant attachment style can often go into a relationship with these rose-tinted glasses, and not just rose-tinted like more of the anxious style, but also with a lot of sort of distorted views about relationships and how they should work. And the tricky part is they can also at the same time withhold some of these ideas until they come out later unbeknownst to you. Now some FAs, and again not all because we're not going to typecast human beings into a tiny little category, these particular FAs can sometimes throw caution to the wind about any misgivings or fears or concerns that they have about the person or the relationship. And these can be even very valid ones. And instead, they'll kind of dive headfirst into the relationship, and especially in the beginning. And this can happen for several key reasons. So the first is their anxious part might be on overdrive, hoping this person likes them and won't reject them. Next, their fear of abandonment might be running the show, that might be pushing them to try to, really hard to get some commitment or some sense of certainty about the relationship, even when a part of them is still uncertain about the relationship. And third, they can desperately want to feel that connection and safety, but they can often seek it out in sort of superficial ways that don't really meet their need on a deeper level. So let me give you an example, like prioritizing financial security in a partner while overlooking emotional availability, or focusing on physical attraction while ignoring compatibility in their values with that person. And anyway, it could be a number of things. Those are just a couple of examples. And you may have even noticed how some fearful avoidants future pace in relationships earlier than is usually appropriate. They'll talk about the future they see with you. They might even make plans months or even years ahead of time, to where you might even be like, whoa, like, you might have this reaction of like, well, wait a second, let's hold on here. And they fantasize about your life together all before truly knowing if you're compatible. Now, we had to talk about all of that lead up in order to talk about this next part, which is the reality shift. So this happens as the honeymoon phase of the relationship starts to fade and as the relationship progresses. So inevitable kind of bumps in the road appear, both major ones and minor ones, and the attachment deepens and they begin to feel significantly more vulnerable. This is where this critical shift happens. They start to see your relationship and you as they really are. They begin to see you, warts and all. They suddenly notice all the things that bother them, even though those things were likely there all along. And the difference is that now they're actually seeing them rather than overlooking them or pushing them aside, because they're so hyper-focused on maintaining the attachment. And this happens much more drastically for the fearful avoidant compared to, let's say, a secure person who can generally go into a relationship with their eyes wide open. They see things pretty clearly from the very start. But for the FA, it's like being hit by by a ton of bricks. The rose-colored glasses come off and they see this new reality. Maybe you can relate to this just a little bit. Have you ever wanted something really bad, like you were up for a promotion or you were applying for a new job or you thought something really cool was going to happen in your life, and you start to kind of build the fantasy of what that would, look like, what you would, who you would be in that job or how much money you'd make in that promotion and then you play out the fantasy of everything that you would do with the things that you now have. It's kind of like, I don't know, playing the lottery, right? And creating the fantasy of what you might do with that money if you got it. But when you don't win or you don't get the job, then all of a sudden you're confronted with the reality of what is actually your life at this point in time. So imagine that fearful avoidants have a version of this that's kind of like multiplied by 10, where they can often go into situations with this, unhealthy kind of rose-tinted glasses. And when it gets shattered, it can feel pretty crushing. When that happens in a relationship, this grieving process starts to begin. And this is the strange part that often confuses partners because the FA starts to grieve. The onset of this grieving can happen all at once or more gradually. So as a recovering FA, I'll share a personal experience. I had a relationship, many years ago, like a decade ago. This was before I started to really do the work on my attachment style. And my partner and I, we had a week of separation. I was going to do some self-development type stuff. I was actually going to a meditation retreat, and we spent a week apart and we didn't talk, we didn't see each other, we didn't really interact. And when I saw him again, I was very surprised because I saw him very differently, literally upon laying eyes on him. I remember looking at our relationship and suddenly realizing that it was really unhealthy. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, and that was very uncomfortable. And I found myself crying regularly after that, and he was super confused as to what was going on, naturally, and he didn't know what was happening. And honestly, I didn't really understand it either. I can understand it so much better in hindsight now. But at the same time, some part of me knew and didn't want to admit initially that our relationship was coming to an end. And while another part of me was kind of deep in denial about it. So we ended up breaking up about 6 months later when I finally gave myself permission to admit that something important was really missing in this relationship, and it gave me the permission to leave. So what does this mean for your relationship? Well, when this grieving process happens, many FAs struggle to sort of see the forest for the trees, and they'll often first they'll focus exclusively on what wasn't working and what was missing in the relationship. So they'll go from rose-tinted to kind of a doomsday approach. Next, they'll omit or kind of minimize all the good parts of the connection. So it can be really difficult to kind of connect back to what was working for them and for the relationship. And third, they can experience such intense grief that they can't reason clearly about the relationship. So in some cases, their relationship might actually be quite good, but because the onset of the grief is so intense, it can be really difficult to reason with them, that they might not be seeing things entirely clearly. And of course, for other fearful avoidants, the flaws that they're now seeing might be totally valid. They might be coming to terms with something important that genuinely isn't working for them. And in these cases, it's probably in your best interest to accept what's happening, because it might be shining a light on real incompatibilities in your relationship. So how do you respond if you're dealing with an FA who's in this kind of grieving phase and seems to be pulling away despite having feelings for you? So you have a few options. First, you want to give them space to process. FAs need time to work through their emotions and gain the clarity that they're looking for. And it can often be confusing for them when they go through something like this and can take time to parse all of these things out. And pressure often pushes them away even further. Next, you want to stay grounded in reality. Yes, your reality. Remember that what they're seeing now isn't necessarily the complete truth. It's just one perspective that might be overly focused on the negatives. And third, you want to focus on your own needs. You want to ask yourself if this pattern is something you can work with long term if this continues on this way. It's really important to consider whether this relationship dynamic is healthy for you. Fourth, open communication. Now, this isn't possible for all situations, but when it is, try to have an honest conversation about what they're experiencing and do so without trying to invalidate their feelings or convince them that they're wrong. A good way to do this is actually talk about your own experience of the situation and using I statements. If this sounds like your situation and you're wondering if you can reason with them or if you should just let them go, I'd recommend booking a coaching session so we can dig into your unique dynamic. You can do that on my website right up here. And as well, if you are a fearful avoidant and you have been listening to this video and hearing yourself being described, and you would like to interrupt this pattern, then I also encourage you to explore working with a coach or a therapist. And of course, I'd be happy to explore a working relationship as well. Did you find this video helpful? If you did, give me a thumbs up. And you can subscribe if you want to watch more content about navigating attachment styles. Next up is my video on the fearful avoidant and why they come back. It's one of my more popular videos on this topic, so on the fearful avoidant topic, so definitely check that out right up here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye!